Welcome back, strange crew. You are tuned into another trip through life's deep cuts. We hope you enjoy the ride.
Keep it strange.
We are rolling. We are live. And this one is a pretty special one, I got to say. It's, I think, been, 8.5, 9 years in the making?
Yes, we are so excited to have Tim Durling of Tim's Vinyl Confessions finally.
Strange crew, you've got your wish. And we've got ours too, it seems, because it's finally happening.
How are you doing, Din?
I'm doing good. You guys are too kind. But yeah, it's been quite a few years, I think, since I ran into you guys at one of the early record expos, yeah, and it was not even in the same spot. I think it was 2019.
Yeah.
2018 or 2019. Yeah. So yeah, no, I'm glad. I'm grateful for you guys having me on.
So today we're chatting about vinyl per se, but a book about vinyl, perhaps. Your new book, The Sound That Haunts You, Beginner's Companion to Fleetwood Mac. First of all, congratulations. For chatting a little bit before we hit record, just sort of all the work that goes into publishing a book. But yeah, we were super excited. As any longtime listeners know, Kate and I are huge Fleetwood Mac fans. They've been a running thread of Strange Grooves for the past 8 years. So yeah, we're super excited to chat with you about this. I guess to start things off, why Fleetwood Mac? I remember you mentioned before we hit record that this was a bit of a different band or group for you to cover. So tell us a little bit about this, how this came about.
Yeah, it definitely is not in my usual sort of 70s, 80s rock, hard rock, whatever wheelhouse. But I'm so glad it had happened this way. It kind of started with a comment from my mother-in-law that I don't even think she was serious, but it planted a seed, because once I started putting out books, of course, I had the support of my family, whether or not they like what I'm writing about. But she's a big Fleetwood Mac fan. She passed that on to my wife, who kind of got me listening to Fleetwood Mac going on almost 13 years ago, because they weren't really a band they were a band I was familiar with as far as the radio was concerned, but I never actively bought their albums and listened to, they were just a band that was on the radio. But my mother-in-law said, "Tim, when are you going to write me a Fleetwood Mac book?" And I had no thoughts of doing a book on Fleetwood Mac. Not that I don't enjoy their music, because I definitely do. But number one, yeah, I did sort of have a precedent of writing on sort of like harder rock bands, maybe a little progressive stuff, but not bands as mainstream as Fleetwood Mac. And also, I also tend to write books on bands that have had very few books written about them, or in some cases, no books written about them besides the one that I did. So with Fleetwood Mac, that is definitely not the case. I mean, there have been books that have been written about just one album. So I always think, what have I got to say that's different, that would hold its own in a market full of great content, great books about Fleetwood Mac and its various members? And I got thinking about it, and their back catalog is so immense and so varied. And I don't know that the average listener knows how far back Fleetwood Mac goes. The self-titled album from 1975, the first one with Stevie and Lindsay, was their 10th album. I mean, it's pretty crazy how many albums they had before they got really, really popular in North America and worldwide. And of course, that would make Rumors the big album, the one that everybody has, the one that will always sell. That's their 11th album. They were not a new band. And it's a fascinating catalog. It's a fascinating story. And I wasn't interested in writing their story. Their story's been told many times, other than the fact that sometimes their story comes out in their songs. But I was thinking to myself, because I've always been the type of music fan that when I get into a band, I don't buy one album. I don't buy one greatest hits. I usually get into the entire catalog. And with Fleetwood Mac, it is such a huge catalog. It's kind of intimidating. And I thought, well, okay, if what's the kind of book that I would have liked to have been able to read back in 2013 when I was really diving into this band and really not sure where to go next. That's why I called this a beginner's companion. Sometimes I have books that I'll call a listener's guide or the listener's guide to. This one's a beginner's companion. This one is saying, okay, if you've got the self-titled or Rumors or Greatest Hits or The Dance, you're a little bit curious to go a little further. Where do you go from there? And this book talks about each of the studio albums and songs that weren't tied to any one studio album. A couple new songs on a Greatest Hits here, a couple songs on a live album there. That's in a separate chapter. So I tried to cover everything that was officially recorded and released under the name Fleetwood Mac. And the name Fleetwood Mac means different things to different people around the world, right? Like if you grew up in the late 60s and you were into the blues rock stuff, the Peter Green era, that's Fleetwood Mac. Everything else is just that pop stuff that came afterwards. But to most people, Fleetwood Mac conjures up those images of 5 people in particular, right? The best known lineup, the Rumors lineup. But there's just so much, and there's a lot to talk about even in there. But I was never just going to do something that just talked about the hit making years. I wanted to go through the entire catalog and talk about the songs on them, what I think of them, good or bad. I give my honest opinion. And then at the end, I kind of sum it up like, here's how it did on the charts. Here's how it's done in the years to follow. Things like that. And I'm really glad that my mother-in-law made that sort of offhanded comment, because it took me down a road I wouldn't have normally gone down, and I've learned a lot. And there's so much music that I owned, but I gained a whole new appreciation for. Like, and we can get into that. But there's one period of their career in particular that I really gained an affection for, because every time I do a book like this, I never rely on memory for the music. I have to do a lot of serious listening and just drill those albums in really hard to make sure that I'm remembering things correctly. So, I came out of this an even bigger fan, and I was more than happy to get this out to people and to say, hey, you know what? It's cool that you've got a couple other CDs or a couple of their records, but there's an awful lot more. And here it is, because a lot of times it's like they've just got so many albums. When did they all come out? What do I do? What do I do? Sometimes the internet has the information, but it's not organized. I wanted something that was in a nice little spot. You could, and if you're driving and you hear the song Sarah, oh, I love that song. What album is that from? And you can look up the chapter just on Tusk and read about that. It doesn't have to be a cover to cover read. Have I answered your question? It seems like I've gone off for a long time.
No, we love it.
We love it. Yeah.
It's one of those things too, like, Sharice and I, we've listened to them forever, and our parents listened to them for a very long time. And, of course, the hits, but if any time you like a band, I can remember, being 13, 14 and like finding bands that I liked, and there wasn't YouTube and stuff at that time. Mm-hmm. You had to physically go to the stores and ask somebody if they knew about this obscure Fleetwood Mac album or an obscure rock and roll album. And I know for us, for Sharice and I, we joke all the time, because as we're getting older now, there's music that, for me, it was the Grateful Dead. I always listened to Fish, but now that I've gotten older, I'm really starting to get into the Grateful Dead. And we meet a lot of people who say the same thing about Fleetwood Mac. They've heard The Chain, they might have heard, a couple of the hits, but they've never really dwelled into them. And we actually have a friend, we have a callback all the time. We always joke whenever we're listening to it, and we say, they said, yeah, I don't really listen to them. We said, just give it a few years. Once you mature, you'll listen to Fleetwood Mac. And now it's one of the bands that they listen to all the time.
There's a lot of truth there. Yeah.
This book will be a fantastic gift for this person. It'll be a kind of a joke too, because now it's a great way for someone, I picture myself being 13 again and having a book that could take me through it and teach me through it instead of just Googling it and YouTubing it. It's such a lackluster experience. This is a very curated experience, right? And it tells you so many interesting things. I mean, Fleetwood Mac to me is very heavy metal back in the day. I love in your intro that you wrote the lyrics to Oh Well. I mean, Sharice and I, we got to see Fleetwood Mac, not with Lindsay, but with Mike Campbell, which was very cool. When was that, Sharice? 2022?
No, I think it was 2018.
Okay.
It was 2018.
Yeah, I think it was pre-COVID that
You're right.
yeah, with
I just
Mike
think that
Campbell
was
and
a
Neil
couple
Finn.
years ago. But
Yeah,
when
I
we
know,
saw
I
that,
know.
one of the things I noticed too is that there's so many people that didn't realize like Black Magic Woman came from the Peter Green
Exactly,
era. And, like,
exactly.
like there's a lot of like heavy metal in some of this more soft rock, as somebody might call it. And we found it really interesting to be there to see the lead singer of Crowded House and Mike Campbell on stage and the Tom Petty tribute. I think it actually gave Sharice and I more of a Fleetwood Mac experience than if maybe we had seen them with Lindsay. And I mean, how people will come for me in the comments on it, but when people physically want to play together, you can feel that energy. And we thought it was so cool to learn about like Greenie and all those things and actually see those things in music now and to know what they represent.
Exactly. And it's, you mentioned pre-internet. That is so vital. Like, and I try to tell people, like, it's hard to explain what it was like when you couldn't just go online and know something.
Yeah.
If you didn't have an older sibling, an older cousin, someone that could say, the idea of this book is kind of like to have somebody sitting on your shoulder going, oh, you're thinking about getting into Fleetwood Mac, huh? Mm-hmm. I think you should try this album. Now try this album. Now try that album. Don't go into that one just yet. Wait on that one. How about this one?
Right.
And as far as so I was born in 1974. So, I mean, you might have thought that I'd heard this stuff on the radio from a very early age. That really wasn't the case. I really didn't start hearing Fleetwood Mac until probably when Tango in the Night came out in 1987, because by then I was really listening to Top 40 radio and watching Much Music and really paying attention to who sang what songs. So that's kind of where I came on board. I knew they'd been around. I just didn't know how long they'd been around. My first clue, and I write about this in the book, my first clue about the Peter Green era was because I was such a big Aerosmith fan.
Right.
In 1991, they put a box set out called Pandora's Box, and one of the extra songs or the unreleased songs was them doing a song called Rattlesnake Shake.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember listening to that thinking,
Who is this?
reading the liner notes and going, this is a Fleetwood Mac song? I'm like, who's Peter Green?
I know.
Like this doesn't sound like what I think of when I think of Fleetwood Mac. I think of the soft rock stuff, not heavy blues rock. And so that was my first clue that there's a lot more here. And there is. I mean, yeah, and that's why you mentioned Black Magic Woman. That's why I did that chapter. Well, part of the reason was because I did this book myself. It's shorter than my panel books where I've got other people contributing their content. I didn't want it to be too short a book. And I thought, what can I add? What can I put in this that's some added value? And I thought, I wonder if I could come up with or find 100 different Fleetwood Mac songs by 100 different artists, like cover songs, not 7 people doing the chain. I mean, individual songs. And that's when I came up with that idea of having all of those covers. And that's when I discovered some really, really off track versions of Fleetwood Mac songs. But I made sure and included Black Magic Woman because I'm thinking that a lot of people know that song and they probably think Carlos Santana wrote it. But no, that is a Fleetwood Mac song.
And a lot of people, Tim, are looking into Fleetwood Mac and the spirituality of it and the energy and who is, Christine McVie, who is Mick Fleetwood? What are their philosophies on how they created music? How do they talk to each other now? What happens when a band member passes? Right.
Yeah.
And Stevie Nicks was just at the Met Ball for the very, very first time. So
yes.
Lots of young people are going to meet
it is so wonderful. That this band, I mean, we're talking about my book, but there is a great book out by a writer named Alan Light called Don't Stop, Why We Still Love Fleetwood Mac's Rumors. And it talks about how younger people, probably more than any other classic rock band, Fleetwood Mac don't seem old to them. And they're continually discovering it. I mean, we have a niece who's 15 and she's got a record player and records, and they're all Fleetwood Mac records. And she actively listens to them, which is fantastic. To
it. There's a whole philosophy of life around when you take your time to listen to people who make music around love and heartbreak.
And they have such a mystique around them. There's such a mystique around how, it's one thing that usually you break up with someone and you go out of your way not to see them. But imagine working with them and in that concentrated space. and being able to compartmentalize. And they did that for so many years. And it obviously, that hurt and pain came out in the music. There's something very compelling about it. I think the music would be just as good without knowing any of that. But I think a lot of people, they kind of have a general knowledge of that part of Fleetwood Mac's story. But as I like to point out in the book, there was plenty of drama in Fleetwood Mac long before Lindsay and Stevie joined up. The whole Bob West and Mick Fleetwood's wife, and like, and Jeremy Spencer joining a religious cult, and
happened with Peter Green, right? Like
Peter Green and the LSD, and wanting to give all his money away. Like, it's a fascinating group, and it's a fascinating. What do you even call Fleetwood Mac? I mean, I guess that you call them a rock band. You kind of use that blanket term, but they've done just about every type of music throughout their career. And you think about, like, only John McVie and Mick Fleetwood have been there for, all of those albums. And because of whoever's singing and playing guitar and playing instruments, I mean, they're going to drive what the music sounds like. So they've had to play so many different types of music, and it's just kind of rolled along. And just the fact that back then in the 60s and 70s, record labels gave bands time to develop and in the hopes that they would stumble upon something that started to sell some records. That doesn't happen anymore, right?
No,
if an artist doesn't make it right away, they're done. You're
not making TikTok sounds and
exactly.
not in the next album and promoting it and pimping yourself out. Like, it's one of those things. And you're right. People had to take time to curate the sound. They had to actually go through heartbreak and troubles on the road and like having planes go down and actually having life happen versus just writing about bullshit. You know what I mean?
And then and that's also how Fleetwood Mac in particular ended up with such a vast back catalog that's just begging to be discovered. It's just sitting there waiting to be discovered. Like for everybody that loves, the Buckingham-Nicks period, there's a wealth of great music waiting, before and after.
She's really like when we'll have like our spinning events and stuff, sometimes she'll play some more obscure stuff and people are just like, like, what is this? And we're like, oh, it's Fleetwood Mac. And they're like, wait, what? Who's playing guitar on this? What's going on? And
exactly.
I always wonder, I think books like this are going to be really important because teenagers like me 20 years ago, we didn't have this. When we went to the library, there weren't books like this out. It was like, oh, here are the genres of rock and roll music.
Yeah.
But now being able to go find something like this, it allows people to understand what the dynamics are when bandmates change, when someone like a Christine McVie passes away. Yeah. Right. What happens, when people are saying, I'm not going to go see them. They don't even have Lindsay with them anymore. It was one of the best shows we've ever seen. And the reason being is we know how much Mike loved Tom. We know how much Stevie loved Tom. We know how much Mike is a great guitar player, and he ripped those songs. It was a fantastic show.
That was a natural fit because, I mean, Mike Campbell was co-writing with Stevie
for a long time.
I mean, there's a song on Behind the Mask that he co-wrote called Freedom, which is one of the better songs on that album. I mean, you raise a good point. There's a lot of these songs where you could put on somebody on blindly, play the song and say, okay, who was that?
But people they'll tell you, get stuck in their ways, right?
They'll tell you everybody but Fleetwood Mac, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when we had a lot of people say, oh, you guys that wasn't even the real Fleetwood Mac. And we're just
right.
Like,
well, what is Fleetwood Mac, right? If this Fleetwood Mac is more than a group of 5 people. Fleetwood Mac, it's an entity.
That's right.
And there's been so many people that have contributed and made that what it was. But I mean, the ironic thing is that before Lindsay and Stevie joined, I think almost every one of their albums, there was a slightly different lineup. So it was constantly changing and evolving lineup. And because that lineup solidified and was successful, they stayed together despite all of the problems that were there because they realized that they were better together than separate. I always think that there's something that there's a chemistry there that is undeniable. And those songs will never go, those songs will never be too far away from the airwaves or something. And because they, recorded these songs long before there was the internet, long before there was TikTok, they did the work and people on their own are discovering it and making these things go viral and ensuring that rumors will always sell. Like as we started this conversation, somewhere in the world, somebody's listening to rumors for the first time, statistically. However, I would like to say that the period that I think needs the most light shed on it is the Bob Welch period.
Yeah, that's
Between
pretty rough.
1971 and 1974.
Yeah.
So after Peter Green left and before Lindsay and Stevie joined, those albums, Bare Trees and Mystery to Me and Penguin, they have some fantastic songs on them. And there are songs, especially songs that Christine sing, that you could play for people and they'd be like, that's really good. I've never heard that Fleetwood Mac song before. They should be on the radio. They should be working some of those songs into rotation. And then you have the Buckingham-Nicks album, which was a really happy accident because I started writing this book not knowing that it was being reissued. And what a great thing to have happen, because I didn't just want to just go on YouTube and look up, some old vinyl rip of that album. I wanted to buy the album and listen to it. And that's an album that you could sneak on and people would just think, oh, I've not heard this. Yeah, they just think it was a Fleetwood Mac song they hadn't heard before. But it's so weird how so much of that sound was right there on that album, yet it wasn't quite there.
A lot of marketing that's happening in the music industry right now, even if you go to Lindsey Buckingham's TikTok right now, it's him showing his kids old performances.
I love that.
B-track songs that they didn't even realize he played.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what's happening a lot. Like the Rick Beatos of the world. Like it's them being like, hey, have you guys ever heard about this curated beginner's guide to Fleetwood Mac? It's the people like yourself, the Rick Beatos, that are really like transcending the information to other people. And it's how we communicate and get it out there. So having conversations, writing books is more important than ever. AI will never be able to touch that on the storytelling aspect. It might help with some formatting or maybe some more, words, but I think the genuineness of it is important. And as people find things, I think these types of resources are more critical than ever. And how I think it's really cool because you did it in a way where you were learning as you went. You didn't just come in hot thinking that this is just everything that has to be in it. I love that it was reissued as you started to write it. I think it's a lot more organic and it gives you an ability to think about how you write additional beginner's guides. Right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Like, what's been the feedback so far from the book?
I've had a lot of people say to me that, they did not know that Fleetwood Mac had that many albums and in some ways that many lives, that many different iterations of the band before and after the Buckingham-Nicks period. Thankfully, now that vinyl is popular again, those earlier albums are being reissued. And hopefully when somebody's flipping through the racks, they'll see the name Fleetwood Mac and they'll say, well, what's this? I don't know this album. And if they've read my book, they'll be like, oh, that's the one he said was really good. And I also, jokingly, I Fleetwood Mac is a band that I love, but they've got some really, really weird album covers. So I joke about that too. So when you see something like Mystery to Me or Mr. Wonderful, or especially Heroes Are Hard to Find, you go, oh yeah, that's the one he was talking about. But he did say it has some good songs on it. Yeah. I mean, I just don't think there's a lot of it that just, you can tell there was no plan behind it.
Yeah.
I mean, is the Rumors cover a great album cover, or is it just iconic because it's so popular? I don't know. I think Tango in the Night is a beautiful cover, but that was an existing painting. There's it gets your attention. That's for sure. I mean, you see an album like Then Play On, you don't forget it.
That's true.
But yeah, it's there's just so much to dig in with this. For such a well-known group, there's a lot that people don't know about them, and that's because they've had so many different versions of them.
Right.
But yeah, those Bob Welch albums, I say it to people all the time. Like, look, if you're going to dig into something and you love the Buckingham-Nicks sound, the sound had began with those albums, that California soft rock sound. Bob Welch was the first American in this otherwise British band. And he, if it wasn't for him, they wouldn't have moved to California. A lot of pieces wouldn't have fallen into place, right? But yet those albums, 5 albums in 3 years, a lot of music on there, and a lot of it is just really, really good. I always say to people, if just go listen to the song Hypnotized and tell me if that doesn't just put you into another space. It's such a cool song.
So true.
And you won't hear that if you only have the Buckingham-Nicks stuff. You'd be missing out. So yeah, this is a way that I can say, I don't expect everybody to buy all the albums at once, but hopefully this can kind of lead them, and even if it's something like they go, oh yeah, I remember that song Sentimental Lady. I didn't know that was a Fleetwood Mac song. Or, oh yeah, I remember that song Save Me. What album was that on? And something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I also cover that album that Lindsay and Christine did in 2017, because as far as I'm concerned, that's a Fleetwood Mac album.
Yeah.
I think he had everyone on it except Stevie
Except
Nicks.
Stevie, yeah. Yeah. And I had the pleasure of talking to Mark Needham, who was a producer and engineer, and he was the engineer on that album, and also Say You Will. So I got some insight from him about working with both sides of those. And yeah, I mean, there's been we lost Danny Kirwan to, mental illness. I mean, his story is a sad one. Bob Welch, very sad story. And of course, losing Christine was just, was just heartbreaking for someone that you'd never met. She was just that comforting voice, and she was the steady anchor in that band for so many years.
Yeah.
For so many years, and just kept them. And also, she's the familiar sound. When you get into the Bob Welch albums, you might go, well, I like this, but I don't know who it is. When you hear her sing, you're like, oh, that's Fleetwood Mac. That's got to be Fleetwood Mac.
My question for you is sort of doing all this research, like listening to all these albums front to back. How has it changed your view or relationship with Fleetwood Mac and their music?
I will go back to albums like Bare Trees and Future Games, and then I'll fast forward to Say You Will. Like, I kind of go out of my way to listen to the non-obvious albums now, because I remember all the gems that are on them. The funny thing is, like, my favorite album ultimately is probably Tango in the Night.
Really?
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic album. And I've got the deluxe version, which has like a bunch of extra songs that didn't make the album, and some of those songs are really good too. I don't know, but also those singles from that album take me back in time to when I was actively listening to the radio. So I have when I hear Seven Wonders and Little Lies and Everywhere, I remember, being grade 8, I guess, grade 7, grade 8. But the other songs on the album that I'd never heard before until like the last few years, like the title song, Tango in the Night, like When I See You Again, You and I Part 2, like there's great. It's just a fantastic album, and I think the production on it is aged incredibly well. I think it sounds like it could have come out last week. But I've got there's lots of albums by them that I really, really like, and then there's some that I don't like that much at all. Like at the Time album that came out in 1995, I really don't like that album very much. But I made sure it was never gonna be just about me saying every one of these albums is great and you should get them all. It's like, here are all of the albums. This just happens to be what I think of them. You might think they're great, but at least you know where to start, and you know where the songs are, and you know who's playing on them and what it looks like.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. No, I love that. That's really good.
So I typically, in Strange Grooves fashion, ask the final question, which is kind of our strange solitary sounds, which is you're stuck in a room. There's 5 albums or 4, 3 albums. But I'm going to change it around. You're stuck in a room and there's only 3 Fleetwood Mac albums. Which albums are you going to choose and why?
I'm going to say Bare Trees for one, from 1972. That's the second of the Bob Welch albums. That is a fantastic album. It's got the original Sentimental Lady on it, which was a hit for Bob Welch as a solo artist in 77. But again, when you listen to that, it's got Christine singing on it, so it sounds like Fleetwood Mac. It's got a lovely instrumental from Danny Kirwan called Sunny Side of Heaven that's just beautiful. And they actually did that and some of the other songs into the Buckingham-Nicks, those early tours. For example, Christine has a song on there called Spare Me a Little of Your Love, which could totally have been a hit if it had been promoted. It could have been on the self-titled album. So that's definitely one album. I got to say Tango in the Night, because I just think that's a killer album from start to finish. And for a third one, you know what? Just so I'll have plenty of music, I'm going to say Tusk, because I have a soft spot for that album, because when I first got into Fleetwood Mac, I was kind of excited to hear that album because I knew it had this reputation. Oh, this was the weird album. This was Lindsay giving the finger to the music industry. This was the, it sold 2 million and returned 4 million and blah, 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 blah. I wanted to hear it. And I really like that album, as quirky as it is. It was such a gutsy move on their part to say, you know what, we're not giving you Rumors Part 2. Dig this. At least Lindsay thought that way. I've always thought that Christine and Stevie just came up with songs that they would have just for any other recording project. But I mean, Sarah is such a heartbreakingly beautiful song. The title song has got to be one of the weirdest songs to ever be a top 10 single.
I love it.
But I love some of the quirky Lindsay songs, and they're like, It's Not That Funny, and The Ledge. What Makes You Think You're the One? Oh, that's such a good song. So yeah, Bare Trees, Tusk, Tango in the Night.
Love that.
Solid picks, well thought out,
Solid picks.
I love it.
And if I could add a fourth, I would say Then Play On, because that is my favorite of the Peter Green era.
That is
so, Strange Crew, it sounds like potentially in the future we're going to have a Fleetwood Mac listening party with Tim. And y'all can come out and ask your questions and get a copy of the book, because that just sounds like it's going to be fun. And I feel like we can maybe make it like a very fun all ages moment so that we can have lots of different people and their families come out, right? I know a big thing for me, me and Sharice, we just took my dad to Toronto to see Amel and the Sniffers. It was his first punk show ever. And I think that sharing music with other people and explaining it to them and nerding out about it, it's what we have now, and humanity. It's how we connect. I'm just looking at your little puppy. Hi.
And I was like, Dog! It's a dog. It's like, sorry.
Hey, buddy.
But like that's what it's about. It's about like
our
babies. It's about nature. It's about music. And I think, gathering community around like friendship and music. It's what we have. Hi.
That's Rufus.
Hi, Rufus. He's like, oh hey, I'm a podcast star now.
He shows up a lot. All of our animals are sometimes in the background here. We got 2 cats and 2 dogs. We actually did an episode about favorite albums that have dogs on the cover, and of course, Tusk was one of them.
Spot.
Amazing. So, if people are watching and they want to get a copy of your book, where can they go? Where can they find it?
Amazon, whatever part of the world is home to you, like it's available worldwide. So just type in my name, Tim Durling, and all of my books should come up. And I do also want to make mention that this book cover was drawn by my wife's best friend, Sally Ann, who did these sort of like drawings of a couple of our pets that fortunately we no longer have. But I knew she was a really good artist at that. And I had this idea of this penguin with the headphones on listening to an album. So she came through with a beautiful, beautiful cover. So
now, did she get the first copy or your mom?
Sent her. Yeah, she was actually visiting. She lives in Portugal now, but I had a proof copy I was able to give her before it officially came out. Yeah,
that's great. No, that's
amazing.
Awesome.
Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have you on again very soon. And again, congratulations on the book. And thanks for taking the time to chat with us.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
And thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for watching or tuning in.
Go get this. It's really good. If you've got a Fleetwood Mac fan in your life, go get it. And if not, get it anyways. It's easy, it's accessible, and you should just put it in your collection.
There you go.
Thank you.
And until next time, keep
it strange.
Bye, everyone.
If you've enjoyed this, then you have to hit strangegrooves.com for more amazing content. To support this podcast and music community, go to patreon.com/strangegrooves. As always, keep it strange.